OSI people, Doty's OSI, there are a couple other ones I'm aware of, and there are other agencies involved as well here. And I become aware that they are really involved in what Bennewitz is talking about, and they're fascinated by it, and they want more information. And they suddenly start urging me to make personal contact with Bennewitz. And I'm resisting that. I'm saying, well, I'm not sure I want to do that. I'm getting information from him. I'm on the outside of it. I don't know that I want to really get myself into that. I don't know what this is all about. Well, finally I decided it's just gotten to be too curious and I need to go meet Bennewitz. So by this time, it's very early part of 1981. And I make an effort to get in touch with Bennewitz, and he welcomes the kind. I introduce myself as being on the APRO board. He knows who I am already. And I arrange a meeting. I go over and meet the guy. And that is the beginning of what ultimately developed into quite a lengthy relationship with this man, where I find myself in a position of playing spokesperson for APRO to him on the one hand, and keeping tabs on what he's doing and supplying that on the other hand to the OSI. That's kind of a delicate spot to put yourself in. But again, either you play or you don't play. If you play, you learn more, and if you don't, they get somebody else. But it's obvious to me that there's a lot more to what's going on than just the Bennewitz thing. This goes on for, I don't know, a couple of months anyway. And all of a sudden, Bennewitz starts claiming that he is receiving low-frequency radio signals that he believes are coming from UFOs and that they're directed at Kirtland Air Force Base. And where Bennewitz is living is in a condominium housing project, a very high, posh kind of a thing in the Fort Hills section of the city, which is sort of off in the corner of Albuquerque, and that his house faces right out on the security fence across the street to the Kirtland complex. And that immediately across there, about a mile over, is the Manzano complex, which is a whole series of underground bunkers and tunnels and so on and so forth, with 6 layers of security between you and them, patrolled constantly, wherein a great portion of America's nuclear arsenal is stored. The nuclear weapons storage area, among other things. And Bennewitz is convinced that these communications that he believed were coming from aliens were being directed at a facility on the top of one of these hills in the Manzano complex, just above an area known as Coyote Canyon, which is a secure part of a sort of a test and research and development range right adjacent to the backside of Manzano, the south side of Manzano. And Paul is convinced that these are coming from aliens. He's, because of his work with this abductee where he thought she was under control, he develops this hypothesis that the planet is about to be invaded. That these aliens are abducting people and implanting them with control devices in the back of their neck, which is like the Invaders from Mars movie of 1954. Virtually the same kind of stuff, even to the shape that he claimed these implant devices look like. Because I got the movie out and rewatched it to see. And that he needed to tell the world. At that point, I began to realize that Bennewitz wasn't just quite on the rails. And why are these government people so blasted interested in this guy? The next thing Bennewitz does is he calls the commander at Kirtland Air Force Base, and he tells him this on the telephone. And he starts talking about intercepting these radio signals that he knows proves it. And the commander's going, what radio signals are you getting? And he says, well, they're beaming them at Coyote Canyon and so on and so forth. Pretty soon the commander gets the idea that something's going on. And he says, well, look, we'd like to set up a meeting. Why don't you come over to the base? I'll get some people together. You can present your evidence. We'll take a look at it. If there's anything that needs to be done with it, we will. All right, that's set up. Bennewitz goes over there and regales a room full of officers, some of whom have come from Washington, D.C., with this same thing. And after he's finished, he's taken into another office. They sit him down, and a couple of people from D.C. point him, look him straight in the eye and say, Mr. Bennewitz, we want you to know that you're treading on very sensitive ground here. This is a matter of national security. Would like your cooperation as a loyal citizen. Would you just back away from this and not get yourself involved? Don't publicize this. And it was like waving a red flag in front of a bull, because he just almost attacked them. I know my rights and I can do whatever I want to do, and the world needs to know about this, and I'm not going to cooperate. You're trying to silence me. And out he went. Well, now the ultimate question is, what was he intercepting? I don't know. I didn't know then. I don't know now. He claimed they were UFOs. He had some film that he shot out of his window of some kind of strange lights playing around over Manzano, which I never quite could explain. He had some still photos. He had these printouts, graph printouts of these radio signals he was getting, and the government was horrified. And their position was that if he can do this, the Soviets can do it. And if the Soviets get wind of what he's doing, and that's why they tried to shut him up. So somewhere, somebody made the decision that since we can't shut him up, we have to make him look like a fool. And they set out on this intensive, long, involved project to dump a load of disinformation on Bennewitz about UFOs, so that when he went to the press to make these claims, they would think he was a madman. And it worked. And there was an office in Washington that I cannot name, but I was aware of it, because here I am keeping tabs on this guy right for them. So I have to be privy to some of what's going on in order to do what I'm supposed to be doing. And what they do is they concoct a whole bizarre story that there are aliens, two kinds of aliens. There are grays and there are blondes, and one's tall and has blonde hair, and the others are short with the big eyes. I've never heard the term grays and blondes before. I'd heard other terms, but I hadn't heard grays and blondes. And that there was a secret treaty between the Americans and the aliens, and that we were exchanging the right for them to have bases on our territory for some of their technology. That there was an underground base under Dulce, under Archuleta Peak in Dulce, New Mexico, and another one in Area 51 in Nevada. Does this stuff sound familiar to some of you? It was all disinformation concocted in Washington that they were feeding to Bennewitz. And he was buying it. And then they went to him with he was getting these radio signals, but he couldn't decode them. He didn't know what they meant. So they found out, they went to him and they wanted to know who was the person in the UFO community that Bennewitz respected the most. And they found out who it was. And they went to that person and they enlisted him to feed Bennewitz a phony key to these coded signals. And they did that. And suddenly Bennewitz starts decoding these signals, and there's signals from these two groups of aliens who are under Archuleta Peak and Dulce, and they're preparing to invade the planet, and they're bringing abductees in there and mutilating them and implanting them, and there's 2 million of them already, and there's more every day, and they really feed him a line. And he buys it. And he starts telling this to the press. And from there, it's all downhill. Because, you know, at that point, everybody just said, all right, you know, the birds are singing and the bells are ringing, and Bennewitz is in the middle, and that's, you know, nobody at that point believed anything he said. This goes on over a period of several years, where they keep at him. And Bennewitz gets just progressively worse and worse, more paranoid, more delusional, more obsessed with what he's doing. And I keep telling him, I genuinely like the guy, and I keep telling him, Paul, get a hold of yourself. Don't believe everything everybody tells you. You know, you're a scientist. Look at this objectively. Do you see what this is doing to you? Look at you. Oh, no, I'm all right. Don't worry about me. I know what I'm doing. They're going to invade the planet, and I've got to stop them. And he's on this crusade to save the Earth. And they're bugging his car, they're bugging his home, and they're bugging his phone, and they were. I knew they were. They were. And I kept telling him, Paul, watch what you say. Oh, no, don't worry about it. I've got nothing to hide. All right, Paul. I had lunch with him one day. I watched him smoke 28 cigarettes in 45 minutes and not touch a bite of his food. He's losing weight. His face is getting thin. His eyes are bulging out. His hair is all askance, just like Albert Einstein. He's got funny marks up his arm. He's making wild claims. All kinds of things happen. And I knew that the end was near. And I even went to his wife, and I said, can't you do something? She said, it's out of my hands. I can't. He won't listen to me even. And it wasn't long after that, he had a nervous breakdown, and they put him in the hospital. And of course, by that time, he was a broken man. He was badly discredited. There's a lot more to the story.
Live, and they wanted to take over the Earth, and they could only trust Paul. They were going to have some kind of agreement with him, but he said, you can't trust anything they say. These aliens are evil, and served to make him look silly, which is exactly what they're trying to do.
Paul actually thought that these UFOs had to be coming from some other place. So Paul on his own went up to Archuleta Peak, which is up in northern New Mexico, around Dulce, New Mexico, and he did his own investigation, basically. Dulce and Archuleta Peak area had a superstition for many years, way before we were ever involved. There were strange lights and strange stories about that area coming from the Indian tribe that lives up there.
If somebody wanted to hide something here, it'd be pretty easy. It's very remote. It's supposedly the site of an underground alien base. That rumor got started in the early 1980s because of what was told to Paul Bennewitz by the Air Force Office of Special Investigation.
Paul is a pilot, and he had a plane, and he flew around those areas, and he saw things, and he filmed things up there that, again, presented a problem for us, because what he was filming up there was actually a secretive military installation that was training commandos. So then we had to convince Paul that what he was seeing up there was, again, UFOs.
The Air Force actually put him in a helicopter with Rick Doty the first time and flew him up to a place above Dulce called the Archuleta Mesa. And before they took him up there, they dumped a bunch of props up there. They flew him up there, flew him over the mesa, and said, you're right, Paul, look, there's stuff here. You know, there's some evidence of what's going on. Why don't you check this out for us?
So I would go with Paul up there, and we actually camped out there a couple times. And then we actually saw some things that startled me, which were fully explained later. But one of the things was kind of interest was lights coming out of the ground. But the way the lights, these beams were coming out of the ground in a pulse kind of manner, that it looked like there were saucers flying out of these mountains. And I actually saw this. And I was somewhat concerned that maybe Paul stumbled onto something.
Paul was flying what he called his missions up around Archuleta Mesa and would send back fascinating letters, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages long, handwritten with pencil sketches of what he'd seen. And finally, he started sending large format 8 by 10 photographs taken with his Hasselblad, in which it'd say, well, here's the black atomic-powered ship that crashed last week. And he'd circle it, and oh, I'd look at that, and bless his heart, I couldn't see anything that resembled a crashed anything.
Something actually did crash near Dulce on the Mesa in the late 1980s. Bennewitz just happened to be flying over and took some pictures of it. And so the disinformation campaign had to be ratcheted up even more. The Air Force, they knew it was something that they were testing up in this area and that had gone off course and crashed. Of course, they told Paul Bennewitz that it was some sort of alien craft that had been given to the humans to use and that they had shot it out of the sky as some sort of a lesson. Agents would break into his house to see what he had, and at one point he had these pictures of whatever had crashed up there, and they were very interested in getting these pictures, so they did. From then on, he went up and just took pictures of where it had crashed. What probably crashed there was some sort of unmanned aerial vehicle, and now they're over in the Middle East, remote-controlled, killing people in cars as they drive across the desert. And in 1985, they didn't really want anybody to have any knowledge of this kind of thing. They took great pains to explain to him that it was this atomic-powered aircraft that the aliens had helped us with, and, you know, bring down that laughter curtain again so people just wouldn't pay attention. They'd think it was another UFO nut.
Somebody gave him a satellite picture of the landing area. In '83, he went up there with me and the chief of police for the Hickory Apache tribe. They had made a landing pad, and he took us right to the spot. They were giving him this information. Some of it was true, some of it wasn't, see. And I think that was the biggest problem that he had coping with. Why this, why not the others, see.
He thought that this was the place where the aliens were getting together to take over the world. And he wanted to trap them all there, kill them all in one fell swoop and save the Earth. By the mid-'80s, he was getting to the point where he had written all these letters to congressmen, senators, TV stations, even President Reagan saying, this is what's going on, the Air Force is cooperating with me, these are the people who are cooperating with me and giving me this information, Ernest Edwards, Richard Doty, all this. He would put their names in these letters. He'd get answers back saying, we're not interested in the UFO subject, and there was this kind of cognitive dissonance. Here are people in the government telling him, yes, you're right, this stuff is going on, let's keep an eye on it. And then elected officials and other people in the media saying, we don't know what you're talking about, this isn't very important. And nobody seemed to care what he was talking about except the Air Force.
So many people knew, ultimately, about Paul Bennewitz and that sad, strange, horrible story, that it got way out of the realm of just a cute flying saucer story.
Paul was convinced that everything he was doing was UFO related. I actually sat down with Paul and told Paul, listen, Paul, I think you ought to stop doing this. I think you've gone as far as you can go, and this is a friend. This is Richard Doty, a friend. It wasn't Richard Doty, a special agent with OSI, talking to him. I said, this is a friend talking to you, Paul, because I became a friend with him. He was a very wonderful person, and I didn't want to see him harmed. And I said, Paul, stop it. Listen to your son, listen to your wife, end it. Get rid of the equipment, lock the stuff away, go on with your life, go back to your work at your business, and stop this. Paul listened to me, and I thought maybe he was going to take my advice, but he didn't. He continued and continued and continued, and at that point we ended the investigation. We ended every involvement with Paul Bennewitz.
By 1988, things were so bad that his family decided to take him to a psychiatric facility and see if they could try and save his life. And he said that aliens would come at night through his wall and inject him with something that would make him get in his car and drive out into the desert. And he didn't remember what he was doing or why he went. The scary thing was there actually were injection marks on his arm.
This is a friend talking to you. Years later, I sat down with Paul at dinner and told Paul exactly that everything we did was a sanctioned counterintelligence operation to convince him that what he was seeing was UFOs, and that what we didn't want him to know was that he tapped into something on the base, and we didn't want him to ever disclose that. Paul looked at me and said, "You don't have to lie to me, Rick. I know it's UFOs related."
He was caught right in the middle of it. And then he was used. If it hadn't been for Paul Bennewitz, I would have never known 70% of the stuff that was going on.
What kind of stuff did you find that would make you think that there was something underground there?
Well, the entrance to where they were.
It was, I mean, big enough entrance to get a truck or a plane or something through?
Yes.
You saw this? Mm-hmm. But it wasn't where Paul said it was?
No.
No?
Well, the first case of the cattle mutilation in Dulce, it was June 14th, 1974. People do kill animals and steal the meat, and it's different. It was different. Why did they just take the udder and the lymph nodes and the tongue at the base of the throat and remove the tonsils? And we're finding the evidence at the mutilations. Gas masks that were made by the military, radar shaft, and the tranquilizers that were in him, atropine, they were injecting them with atropine. I was up front with the ranchers. They were losing cattle and nobody was compensating them. I wasn't hiding anything. I never did.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I would investigate cattle rustling, or somebody would try to kill a cow, and whatever it was, that was part of our job.
So prior to the first mysterious cattle mutilation, I mean, you had probably seen cattle killed before.
Yes.
And but what was it that in your first mutilation looked different, or didn't look human, or at least looked, I guess, yeah, different to you?
Well, there was a lot of factors involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
The cattle, where they were killed, there was no access by vehicle.
Mm.
And the way they cut them up, it had to be somebody doing it.
Uh-huh. And about what year was the first one you had seen?
In 75.
75?
1975.
What were some of your thoughts? What were you thinking might have caused it?
Well, you know, there could be people doing it just on purpose, but it was kind of, why were they taking certain body parts off the animal, you know, and then the animals were dehydrating so bad, you know, and the animals wouldn't eat them or anything, the coyotes, or they wouldn't touch them.
Now, I know in some of the investigations I've gone on, you know, you look for prosaic answer, of course, first. But at that time, you know, were there people thinking that it was aliens or UFOs, and did you give any thought to that?
No, because we were finding physical evidence at the crime scene.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, you know how things expand and they get out of proportion.
Right.
And we were able to track where the aircraft was, because of the turbulence it created, it flipped over cow pads and other debris that was not same color. See?
Okay. And so this indicated to you a sort of helicopter?
Well, there was some type of aircraft involved, yes.
Uh-huh.
And
But
it had to be a helicopter because it's kind of hard to fly fixed-wing aircraft in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they just can't make it.
So pretty early on, you felt it was some human group of people. Then, what were some of the other things that you found? I think you said you found other pieces of evidence showing that.
Yeah, we were able to find glow sticks, radar shaft,
Mhm.
and gas masks,
Yeah.
and other some type of other elements that they left on top of the height.
Ah, gotcha. How strange. That's very strange.
Yeah.
Was that kind of scary for people?
Well, a lot of people didn't know that. See, these areas where they did these, where they killed these cattle, it's isolated and people don't have access to it. See.
Uh-huh.
But they will probably hear about it because of the news media.
Yeah. So then, as a police officer, and the indications are that it is foul play. Who I guess were your prime suspects?
Well, someone was doing it,
Mhm.
and then they had access to all these technology to do it.
Uh-huh. So possibly a government group?
Well, someone was behind it that had access to it,
Yeah.
that had ways to fly in that area and do what they were doing.
Mhm. So did you look to, I mean, once the locals or the owners of the cattle found out that, it was people using technology, they must have wanted some justice.
Yeah, of course they did, and they did a lot of them, like Manuel Gomez. They killed a bunch of his cattle that hurt him.
Yeah.
And that's a crime. And other
Yeah.
people up in Red River and Taos, also the same thing.
Yeah.
And all over the United States, in Colorado, Utah,
Mhm.
Montana, and all those places.
So, were you able to try to find out who it was? I mean, and so these people could be brought to justice?
Well, it's very confidential, but it's very sensitive. Yeah.
Who the perpetrators were?
Yes.
I see. So during this period of time, the FBI came into the area and conducted their own investigation.
No, they didn't do any of my investigations.
They didn't come and look at your evidence?
No.
So were you able to talk to the FBI agent who supposedly did the investigation?
He was a retired FBI agent.
Uh-huh.
The district attorney's office in Santa Fe got a grant for a year to do investigations, and he was a retired FBI agent, and we didn't have any mutilations at all for about 7 years.
Uh-huh.
I did talk to him once, but we didn't have anything nothing happened during that time for a year, or
Wow.
for 7 years.
So
we
when
got the grant in 1980, but we didn't have any mutilations again.
Uh-huh. So that report's on the FBI website now, and his conclusion eventually was that it was predators, but he was never able to do investigation of an actual crime scene or anything.
Not mine. He never
Wow.
did do any.
Uh-huh.
No.
So
he didn't handle any of my cases at all.
Right. And your cases certainly weren't due to predator kill, huh?
No. No, I was raised with cattle and all kinds of type goats and everything. But no, and the evidence that was left there, predators don't leave gas masks, glow sticks, radar shafts.
Right.
They don't leave that stuff. They don't have vitamin B12.
Right. So you were finding vitamin B12 and radar shaft. Can you explain what radar shaft is?
It knocks out FAA towers, so you cannot see aircraft flying in the area.
Mm-hmm. So probably used so they could get their silent helicopters in and out?
Yes.
Do you have any idea why they might be doing this?
We suspect something that, like I said, it's real sensitive.
Yeah, yeah. Now, were you, I guess, ever threatened or told to stay away from the whole situation?
No, I was never, no.
That's
They
good.
placed listening devices in my house.
Oh, they did? Did you find those?
Yeah. And they did it at the tribal police building in Dulce and the tribal administration building, too.
Really?
Yeah.
And I think I heard once that Manuel Gomez and their family had
Yeah,
found
they
them as
did
well.
the same thing. They were identical.
Wow. And were you able to ever find out who it was that put those in there?
We don't know who made them, no, and they needed a search warrant to do it, and they didn't do it.
Wow.
See, so they violated our rights.
Right.
And they committed a crime also.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah.
Does that frustrate you?
Well, I've seen a lot of this junk going all over the place, but I knew, why were they doing that? If predators, if they were interested in what the predators were doing.
Right.
You don't place listening devices for snakes or rats or birds are flying.
Right. Does that upset you that they did that to you at all?
Well, I suspected they were going to do that. They were trying to find out what we were doing. See? In fact, one day we followed one of the sophisticated orbs that was monitoring, but we started speaking in Hikaria, and they got confused.
Really? What did this orb look like?
It looked like a hot air balloon.
Yeah. And luckily you had the advantage of speaking Hikaria. Are you Hikaria Apache yourself? No. But you know the language?
Yeah, I spent 25 years there. Yeah.
Now the Ute are in that area also, right?
Well, Southern Ute, it's different. They're in Colorado, but Dulce is about 80 miles away from it. The Utes are it's northwest of the Hikaria Reservation.
I also saw on an interview with Manuel Gomez that he felt that the craft that were doing this to his animals were coming from an underground base under the Archuleta Mesa.
No, that's where they were landing.
They were landing on the mesa?
Yes, to do other stuff, the other sensitive stuff.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it's not Archuleta Mesa.
Oh, it's not?
It's Mount Archuleta.
Mount Archuleta. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and I had also in Greg Bishop's book had read that you had confronted some of those helicopters, I think on Mount Archuleta?
No, it was at the Dulce airstrip.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I heard that at least I think he told it from Bennewitz's perspective, who had told him, Paul Bennewitz, that everybody was afraid but you, and you bravely kind of went over there and said, "Hey, what are you guys up to?"
Yeah, and what happened, I don't know if there's an explanation there why Bennewitz was up there. They were tracking Bennewitz down. And they wouldn't let him get close to where the activity was going on.
Now, do you believe then there is some sort of underground base in that area?
Yeah, there is. There's 4 of them.
4 of them? Are they active?
I don't think they are. They had a fire there in 1996. And they plugged one of them up, and the other ones are plugged up also.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So, and of course, there's also the rumors of aliens being in these bases.
No, I never did see any aliens in these bases. What we saw was physical activity from within our resources.
Now, have you seen or any UFOs in the area?
I've seen the sophisticated aircraft. But not the other type.
Now, what do they look like?
It's like they look like it's a sophisticated aircraft, not like the stealth, more advanced than stealth.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. And are they kind of a delta or triangular shape like that?
Yes.
Wow. And have you seen then the silent helicopters also?
People have seen the helicopters. They're black and silent.
Uh-huh.
And some people did report them. And see, they would do one incident like tonight, and then they'd wait 2 or 3 months to do the other one. If we would set up surveillance, it'd be kind of hard to sit there for 3 months, you know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So another person who talks about the bases in the area is, or talked before he passed away, was Phil Schneider. And
yes.
I believe you helped with the investigation of his death?
Yes.
How did that happen? How did you get involved?
Well, through some other resources, and his wife asked me to help her.
Uh-huh. And you were able to, what were your conclusions?
Well, when there was something around his neck, plastic, that caused a strangulation.
Uh-huh. So it wasn't a suicide?
No, unless he did it himself. You know, that hasn't been verified, you know.
Oh, okay. So you're not
sure. Or somebody
sure.
else could have done it, not related to that, you know.
Uh-huh. So it could have been a suicide?
Well, that's kind of hard. You don't see too many suicides like that.
Okay, gotcha.
You can see them with people shooting themselves or cutting their wrist or something, bleeding to death, or taking an overdose or something.
Do you believe his death had anything to do with the work that he did or alleges to have done?
Well, it's kind of hard, and it's up to the sheriff's office up there to determine that, you know.
Uh-huh. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, so it's a very active and interesting area you're in. Now, Paul Bennewitz, one of the people who is the main proponent of some of these stories about the underground bases and aliens and stuff like that, he's someone that you actually met and or was friends with for a period of time.
Yes, I became really involved with him.
Uh-huh. So, and the story is, and even Richard Doty, who worked for Air Force, as you know, because you know him as well, he has told people, such as Greg Bishop in his book, who, Greg Bishop, of course, talked to you as well, that he was giving wrong information to Bennewitz. Were you able to witness that?
Well, Bennewitz was very good to giving me information, and after we researched the area, it was true, but I don't know what Richard Doty was communicating with Paul Bennewitz. I know they were following him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That Doty was following Bennewitz?
Yeah, Air Force intelligence.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep. Because one of the things that Doty had said is that he was the one who told Bennewitz that there was a base under in the Dulce area and had supposedly planted jeeps and stuff there to make it look like there was something there, to make him believe that.
No, because it is true, because we did find out what Bennewitz talked about. It's true. It's there. If he did it and somebody else, I don't know why he would do that, but for Bennewitz took me and showed me where the things are, that's true.
Uh-huh. When you talked to Doty, how did your relationship begin with him?
Well, he became a state police officer too, and I get along with Richard Doty. I don't push him around or ask him why did you do it? He had his job to do. He wasn't doing anything criminal.
Well, according to him, he was, or at least, I hadn't thought of it this way, but he says that it was part of his job to break into Bennewitz's house or his lab to see what he was up to. Would that be legal for the Air Force to do that?
I don't think so. If he would have had a search warrant, then it would have been following the procedures. See?
Yeah.
But
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Why were they going to do that if it wasn't true what was going on? Why there's so much concern?
Well, according to Doty, it was because he was seeing things at Kirtland Air Force Base that were secret, and so his boss wanted him to think it was alien stuff so that the Russians wouldn't get a clue of what was really going on.
That's probably true,
Yeah.
But what he showed us up there was true. It wasn't a lie.
Yeah.
It was pretty good information he gave me.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of fits with what you're saying, because you're saying that it's not UFO stuff, it's human stuff.
Yes. And they dropped, they made a mistake one time. There was a mutilation in Chimayo, New Mexico by Española, and they would pick up the cattle or the cows and take them or do something with them away from where they first got killed. And they bring them back and drop them on the ground, see. But one time they dropped one on top of a 20-foot tree in Chimayo. Cows don't jump that high. Yeah.
So the cow was up in the tree.
They dropped it on top of a 20-foot tree.
Wow. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you happen to take pictures?
Yeah, I have pictures of it.
Oh, wow. Would you be able to share those, or maybe if I came by?
Yeah, I'd have to look for them and see. Yeah, but there was other state police officers there with me at the time that saw it. Yeah.
What did your colleagues think? I mean, did they think of you as kind of weird for looking into this, or did they see that what you were looking at was real?
Well, and all this stuff, they think that, but it was our job to investigate what was going on,
Yeah. Yep.
They were taking away the livelihood of these ranchers,
Right. So, was there any justice to be had? I mean, were there anybody who was like a politician or perhaps your boss who was willing to try to stand up for these people and hold whatever clandestine group was doing this accountable?
No, I never did got nobody interfered with me or anything.
Yeah. But nobody kind of helped.
Well, I was very fortunate that the state police didn't tell me, don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah. But nobody went to confront whoever this was, huh?
No. At that time, we didn't know who really was involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think you know now?
Well, yeah, kind of, but it's real sensitive.
Is there any way to bring these people to justice or make them stop?
Probably they're not doing them now. They did some up in Trinidad, Colorado, I think, a year ago.
Uh-huh. Yep, that's one of them I saw because we went on a few investigations in that area a couple years ago in Trinidad, and like you said, this thing looked like it had been dropped. There's no way vehicles could get in there, and one thing that I find interesting is that, people like the FBI or someone will come in and say it's a cattle mutilation, but the ranchers themselves who see animals die a lot know that it's not.
No, it's different. A lot of ranchers see their cattle die of some other, they eat a lot of alfalfa. Cattle cannot eat alfalfa.
Mm-hmm.
They bloat and die, and you see a lot of incidents like that, or other things, and it's completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they know what's going on,
Yeah. Yep. It's pretty unfortunate.
Yeah.
So, with Doty, then you never really talked to him about this stuff.
Yeah, we talked about it, and I knew that he was involved with Air Force intelligence.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, you have to have some respect how you confront people, too, because that was his job,
Yeah.
Yeah. And Bennewitz was communicating with them,
Yeah. Yeah, the reason I asked, was that criminal. I really had never thought of it until I spoke with, I did an interview with John Alexander, who is an Army colonel, and he said he didn't believe that Doty was following orders. He think Doty was making this stuff up. to tell Bennewitz this stuff because he didn't believe the Air Force would tell him to break the law and break into Bennewitz's house.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that went overboard, you know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because he says, yeah, that would not be legal.
Mm-mm. It's not legal.
Is there anything that you could, like, advice you would give to someone who this is happening to, what they can do?
They need to be real careful when they look at one of them animals.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Careful of toxic stuff or just careful?
Well, being exposed to them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the B12 that they use dangerous at all?
Not the B12. B12 enhances the immune system.
Okay. Why do you think it's found in these mutilations?
The researchers they were doing.
Because of whatever. Do you have any idea what kind of research that is?
Well, yeah, but it's real sensitive. Yeah.
But you can't talk about that?
Mm.
So, has someone come and told you?
Have they what?
Have you been told exactly what it is?
Well, we know through the research that we did.
Oh, okay, I see. So, that's how you were able to figure that out?
Mm-hmm.
So, but luckily you haven't gotten any trouble, huh?
No, thanks God. Yeah.
Yeah. What about the?
Of course, I have some attorneys that know about about it, and some high-level people that are aware of it in case something does, you know.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's just, if they were doing experiments, why wouldn't they take the bodies? Why would they bring them back?
And that was a mistake they made. They should have just taken them, not bring them back, burn them, or do away with them.
Uh-huh.
Well, they're trying to make people think that aliens were involved or animals. See?
I see. So it's kind of similar to that other stuff, making people believe.
Well, and that's a mistake that they were making, see?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Do you think that there are animals that still disappear for experiments but just are not returned?
Well, apparently not, because people are close to their animals and they would notice something missing or something dead, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty unfortunate.
And
I know.
If they die of natural causes, their tongue and their tonsils are not missing.
Yeah.
Or okay, yeah.
How has Manuel Gomez, how does he feel now?
Well, that's pretty bad. He made a bad impact on him, you know.
Yeah. Is he pretty
when
upset?
You destroy all them cattle, that's your livelihood, you know.
Yeah.
And even if you lose even 4 or 5 head of cattle, they're taking $2,000 away from you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people depend on that for their livelihood, you know, to survive.
Mm-hmm. Has he ever tried to sue the government?
Well, he doesn't know who to sue. See?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So there's nothing he can do?
Mm.
And unfortunately, I mean, no one's willing to, I guess, investigate further, huh?
Well, no, I guess not.
Uh-huh. But if you know who it was, would you know? Then you know who to sue, right?
Well, I don't want to make any comments about that yet.
Yeah. I guess, are these people who are beyond reproach?
Well, it's real sensitive, like I said, you know.
Uh-huh. How do you feel about what they're doing? Do you feel it's wrong?
Well, it's wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would people be able to protect themselves or their cattle from this?
Just stay with their cattle and sleep with them at night. In case something comes in, you know.
Yeah. So there's not much you can do, huh?
No, there's not much you can do.
There's some people who claim this sort of thing has happened to humans. Do you believe that?
It's possible that it could have happened to humans, too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. None of the cases that I investigated had anything, and I investigated a lot of deaths.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
About how many do you think?
Oh, probably a good 200.
Wow, and this is just in the New Mexico area?
Yeah, just because I was state police officer in New Mexico. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you ever help with investigations in Colorado?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot have happened up there, huh?
Yes.
Are there other strange, unusual things you've investigated in that area?
No, well, yeah, some other very sensitive stuff too.
Uh-huh.
But it's research that's going on.
Uh-huh. Because I know, at least in Pagosa Springs, which isn't too far, and on the Colorado side, and even in that area, there's lots of other weird things like lights in the sky that are reported, balls of lights in the mountains. Have you seen that or investigated that?
Yeah, some of them I have. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Have you seen that yourself?
Yeah, I know how to take pictures of when they go into stealth. Yeah.
The balls of light?
Yeah.
What do you think those are?
Well, they do that. It's a technology that does that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you still think that. And what about, there's also reports of Bigfoot a lot in the area.
That's another thing. It's images.
Just images that are created
Yeah, exactly.
with some sort of technology.
Technology, yeah.
Uh-huh. All of this kind of to trick and fool people.
Yes.
So that's a very active area in whatever secret group is going on down there.
Yeah.
Do you think it's the most active area in the country?
Well, they had it in Utah, they had it in Colorado, they had it all over the place, you see.
Uh-huh.
But it created a lot of attention because of the tunnels, see.
Which tunnels?
The ones that are up there, see.
That are at the Archuleta Mountain?
Oh, in the Dulce area, yeah.
Oh, in the whole Dulce area?
Yeah.
I know I've heard of tunnels that were created because they were going to store nuclear waste under the Archuleta Mountain.
That's possible.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But there's other tunnels also?
Well, yeah, there's about 4 of them.
And these are entryways to the secret bases?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are they still active entryways?
Well, they're not active unless they could see in that area. It's very hard because of the terrain. The mountains hide a lot of stuff. Unless you're up there monitoring 24 hours a day, you can't see it, see.
Mm-hmm.
It could move in the terrain. It's very rough, you know. It's hard to
Uh-huh. Some people have talked about, underground rail systems that connect these bases, and bases even to like Los Alamos and to Kirtland Air Force Base. Do you think those exist?
I've never seen that. You know, you do hear a lot of that.
Uh-huh.
But I've never seen it.
Yeah. People have also reported strange noises in the area.
Yes, people have said that, and then there's the confusion there. You might hear human beings or doing or equipment working there, and that's where the noise comes from, see.
Yeah. Do you live in Dulce now?
No.
No. Oh, you're in Albuquerque.
Yes.
Yep, I love it out there, personally. So how long have you been out there?
Oh, over 20 years.
Mm-hmm. So, as far as you know, there's clandestine activity going on. Is it well known throughout the State Patrol?
Well, and then it breaks up, it picks up, but we haven't had any activity going on since 97, 98, mutilations up in Red River in Taos.
Mm-hmm.
And then it dies down. See.
Do you think that they only work in these places periodically, or do you think they're not there anymore?
I don't think they're there anymore because there's no reports of it anymore. See, like I say, in 1980, starting 1980, we didn't have any for 7 years. Yeah.
So it's only periodical.
Yeah.
So, and you think maybe they only come to these, like, underground laboratories to do certain experiments occasionally?
Yes.
Wow, and you think it's tax money that goes to these programs?
It has to be. Who else is doing it?
Yeah.
If somebody else is doing it, we don't have any defense against it.
Yeah. And that's not good, huh?
If they can come and do that and operate freely without no interference, then we don't have any security at all.
Yeah. Now, I know you went to the recent conference on Dulce Binario Harakawa.
Yes.
How do you feel about people believing in the UFOs and aliens in that area?
Well, they probably, what they see is very advanced. It's advanced technology.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been disclosed.
So if those government people are trying to make people think it's UFOs and aliens, they're doing a good job.
Oh, yeah, anything, you know.
Yeah.
And it's kept hush. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think, like, other people in the government, like the president, know about it?
I don't know if he does or not, or if they share that information with him or not.
Do you think that the FBI knows about it?
Probably they I don't know if they do or not. Probably the top level does, but I don't think they really know what was behind it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that investigation that the FBI did in the 70s, do you think he was genuinely looking for answers, trying, or do you think he was just kind of trying to write it off?
Well, no, they got that grant in 1980. It was, and then we didn't have anything because the people were pushing the district attorney to find some answers to it. See.
And you think they're really trying?
And then predators. The only thing they saw was animals that had died, probably, the natural causes, but didn't have to do anything with the mutilation.
So they genuinely tried to look for answers. It's just nothing was happening during that time.
And justify the grant that was given to them.
Yeah. So they tried. Do you know, have other organizations, like, do you know if the CIA or Air Force has come in to try to investigate also?
Not that I'm aware of. No, not that I know of.
Yeah. So, do you know then, so you probably believe then that Richard Doty did know what was going on in that area?
He probably did know something, but I don't think Air Force intelligence knew exactly everything was going on. They knew a lot about the sophisticated aircraft, see. But the other stuff that was going on, he probably didn't know.
Wow. So it all gets pretty complicated.
Yeah, it does.
Why do you think they hide what they're doing?
Because it's very sensitive, what it is, see.
But, I mean, but it's important enough to create crimes for?
Well, apparently it is, you know, what they did. It's so sensitive.
I mean, do you think it's worth it?
Well, probably after. It might be that they don't want for the public to know about it.
Yeah. Yeah. But is that justified?
Well, they ought to compensate the people that they took the money away from.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
If
they were going to do that, they could have bought animals and do the research on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they don't want to know what's going on. They didn't want people to know why, the research. Excuse me.
So do you think Richard Doty believes in UFOs and aliens?
No, I don't. Well, that I don't know.
Not sure.
No.
Do you?
No.
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 And then with Paul Bennewitz, he had a breakdown. Unfortunately, a mental breakdown where he was institutionalized for a period of time, which is very unfortunate. Do you talk to him after that?
No. He's not around anymore.
Oh, right. Yeah, now.
No.
She just passed.
Yeah.
But were you around when that happened?
Well, I knew he was having some type of, he was having problems, yeah.
Yeah. Yep, that's too bad. And do you think it's dangerous to get too worked up or, like he did, get too wrapped up in some of that stuff?
Well, it's advanced technology, and you never know how it's going to affect you, see.
Uh-huh. So the technology itself might have affected him.
It could have, yeah.
Uh-huh. So, and then I guess when, talking about, just because I have friends and stuff who do investigate cattle mutilations, and who knows, I may, again, once as well, what are the sort of chemicals we need to be careful of?
And that's very sensitive, too,
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of precautions would you recommend?
Just stay away from those cattle.
Just stay away.
Yeah.
And if it's happening to you, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
That's frustrating. I'm sure a lot of people would be frustrated to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's just nothing they can do, huh?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Well, that's too bad. All right. Well, so how about now? Do you mind, like, going to the conferences, and do you go there to speak and kind of let people know about at least what you've told me?
No, I don't talk. I don't get up and talk, no.
No?
No.
You just go to kind of see people and,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and see what's going on?
Yeah.
You think it's important people know that it's not UFOs and aliens?
Yeah, well, I think people are kind of finding out that it probably wasn't, because if it's UFOs and aliens, they can come and take our houses up in the air, and we don't have any defense on it.
Right, yeah.
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 If it's that, if aliens have that advanced technology, they rule the whole world.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. I remember one story,
Bennewitz was taking pictures of them, wondering what was going on. He also started trying to pick up radio signals. He was an electrical physicist. He knew how to do these things. He got a call from somebody saying that there was something he should look into. The call was, I went ahead, but the call was from a New Mexico State police officer who had gotten assigned to a case, or at least to try to help this woman that said she had seen a UFO, a big football field-sized thing hovering over a pasture in northern New Mexico when they were coming home from, her and her son were coming home from a trip. This was also in 1979. So, Bennewitz, being a member of APRO, Area Phenomenal Research Organization, called up and he said, "Who do you think could help me with this?" And James Lorenzen, who was the director of APRO at the time, said, "Leo Sprinkle can help you." This is a picture of Leo Sprinkle. He had been regressing abductees since about 1975. Maybe even before that. I'm not sure how far back his career goes. But at that point, the stories were a lot less standard than they are now. A lot of weird things happen to people that don't come out in stories now, probably because people expect to hear certain things and they block out other things, maybe even subconsciously during the interview process. Hypnosis is really, I don't think it's a good tool for abduction research, but that's something else. Anyway, but perhaps at this time it may have been a little better because there weren't really any preconceived notions about what should be going on. So Leo Sprinkle flew down there. Bennewitz paid for him to fly down to Albuquerque. And a New Mexico State police officer drove this woman, Myrna Hansen. I did say Hansen, yeah. Myrna Hansen from her home in Eagle's Nest, which is a far northeastern corner of New Mexico, right near Oklahoma. They actually had gone to the panhandle of Oklahoma and they were coming back. They were supposed to be home at 9 at night. They didn't get home until 1 in the morning. They wondered why this was, because they had seen these lights. I mean, this is a typical thing everybody's heard about now, missing time. Bennewitz got in touch with Sprinkle, flew him down from Laramie, Wyoming, took a cab to the house, and introduced Myrna Hansen and said, you know, she wants to find out what's going on. Leo Sprinkle put her in a trance and started asking her questions. And this story came out that her and her son, they didn't hypnotize because either she didn't want to or he didn't think it was, Sprinkle didn't think it was useful, or the kid recalled enough they didn't need to. But he hypnotized Myrna Hansen, and she said, we saw these two things, one as big as a, how much time do I have left? Oh, wonderful. 45 minutes? Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah. I'm gaining time, I think. But they had seen these two big things and then seen this herd of cattle underneath it, strangely enough. This hooks into something else I'm going to talk about. The cattle were yelling, screaming, bellowing. They were all, crowding together because they were scared. And under hypnosis, she said she'd seen one of these cows sucked up into this one of the UFOs. And then a few minutes later, her and her son were suddenly inside it, and she saw what was happening to this cow. It was being taken apart. It was dead. It was being mutilated, as it's called now, on board this UFO. That's what she said she remembered. She said she also remembered being in some underground facility somewhere. She could hear running water. She couldn't find her son for a while, and then he appeared again. Aliens or whatever they were told her, no, he's fine, and then they were back together again in their car. She said she remembered the car being lowered onto the road and just kind of went boom, and this blue light, it just dropped back down on the ground, and they were able to continue and go home. When she was under hypnosis, she described something like this, and I think Krista Tilton drew this. She said she saw vats, these big vats on the ship, in the underground facility with body parts floating in them. She didn't know where this facility was, but Bennewitz thought he might know. This is a letter. I've got a lot of letters from Bennewitz. These have never been published. And actually, the telephone numbers and all that are different now, so if you try to call, you're not going to get anything. Or you'll get somebody who doesn't know what you're talking about. These are letters he started to send out to APRO and a few other researchers, people saying, what he had found out, how to interview witnesses, UFO abduction witnesses. Notice the date, 1980. I think Missing Time hadn't come out yet, or had just come out, the first really big abduction book, the one by Bud Hopkins. So he was in virgin territory. He was him and Sprinkle. Actually, he kept hypnotizing. He thought the session went so well. He asked Leo Sprinkle to come back. He came back about a month later in June of 1980, and I interviewed Leo Sprinkle about this. He said when he came to the door, everybody's reading the letter now. Oh, God. I'm going to put it back there. When he came to the door, okay, go ahead and read. When he came to the door, Paul Bennewitz answered the door, and he had a rifle in one hand and a pistol on his hip and said, "Get in here quick, the aliens are coming." And, Sprinkle was like, "What's going on here? This is insane. I can't work like this." But he hypnotized her again. There was, the session wasn't too good because everybody was very nervous, and they wanted to do the hypnosis in an automobile in a garage with barbecue type tin foil on the windows, because he thought the aliens were beaming some sort of mind control rays in and screwing up the hypnosis and controlling Myrna Hansen. This is the only way they could get rid of it. And whether that's true or not, I'm sure it made Myrna Hansen feel just terrible. She didn't know what was going on. And Paul, yes?
I bet it was what he had so familiar with Betty and Barney Hill, though.
Yes, he did.
Right, so
Yeah. Well, every case up to then, including Travis Walton case. Actually, after this incident with Leo Sprinkle coming to the door and the gun and the aliens are coming over the wall at any minute, Sprinkle decided that was it. He didn't want to have to be involved with the case anymore because it was getting out of hand, and he didn't want to make, harm anybody or ruin his reputation or be involved with it at all. So Bennewitz actually found this man, James Harder, who was still alive and didn't want to talk to me, and he said he didn't remember anything about the case, which is weird because he worked with Bennewitz for months. perfecting, if you want to call that the word, these methods. And, they finally ended up putting poor Myrna Hansen in a hotel room with a what does it say? Maybe it's on the last one. Yeah, the X-ray machine. Yeah, that's one of them. But he figures that if it's shielded by some kind of metal, the aliens can't control the hypnosis session. I haven't heard this from any other abduction researcher ever. So either this is a one-time deal or he was completely, off in left field. He also said that they should ground the abductee to a is it on here somewhere? Not really, but they should take a banana plug and tape the one end to the person's wrist and plug the other end into an electrical socket in the ground wire. So they had her hooked up to this thing, sitting. They actually held an umbrella over her with foil under it. Things like that. I mean, and they did hypnosis sessions in moving cars because they thought the aliens could. Very weird things. And, whatever happened to Myrna Hansen, I'm sure that whatever Bennewitz did to her, did with her and to her, probably extrapolated her even further away from whatever the experience was. But at the same time, this started his interest in this underground base, which I will talk about later. This is the Dulce UFO base part that is.
This is that first mutilation I had in 1975. See how they broke the leg? And that animal deteriorated, completely deteriorated into a carcass the same way it is, and just, it was a piece of paper. This is another mutilation that we had at Lindrith, 1980, near Laos Street also. One that I recall very vividly is in the late 70s, about 78 as I remember, April, and that was in Dulce, New Mexico, and the state policeman there, Jay Valdez, that was investigating the situation, gave us a call, that he had a very fresh one. And at that time, we were having a mini conference with Tom Adams here in Massey. So we said we just all jumped in the car and drove down there and looked at it. It was very fresh. And it was so startling because it looked to me like it had been dropped from a great distance. Its horn was driven back into the side of its head, its back was broken, one of its legs was broken, it just sort of splattered on the ground. And you could see drops of blood on its hooves, looking almost like it had fallen in its own spray of blood somehow. And it was classically mutilated, a poured out rectum. So I remember it was tongue cut off, a smooth cut, eyeball cut out with a perfect circle around the eye.
Well, there are some documents in circulation, which again, as most of these documents are, become quite a topic of controversy. They did involve a series of events, sightings over Kirtland Air Force Base, as detected and filmed by a gentleman named Paul Bennewitz.
I believe this gentleman no longer talks to anybody about what happened to him. The folks that I've talked to that knew him feel that something really happened, that he did pick up on something that the government was interested in, and then there was quite an effort made to, I don't know how you even characterize what happened to Paul Bennewitz.
Bennewitz was involved in something that scared the hell out of the military. It scared them to death. They thought that he was going to get some stuff, show it to the public, and somebody out there was going to be able to identify with what he was talking about. That may lead to the cat being out of the bag. So they did. They went ahead, first befriended him, and then went for the juggler.
And as the story developed, it began developing quite a different character as more information emerged. Mr. Bennewitz was gaining information via his computer terminal, ostensibly from an alien civilization or life form, quite extensive material. And also he was led to believe the aliens were harassing and persecuting him, entering his home.
Well, we were at Bennewitz's house one night, and he showed me and my wife how he was communicating with. He kept saying an alien, the Greys, and we did see it on the screen. We saw an object on the screen that looks like the picture that I have here. It looks like the facial part of it.
Disclosure does happen. Yeah, I had the opportunity to meet with Paul because Jim and Coral Lorenzen asked me to meet with him, and he was a bright guy. I was intrigued because his glasses needed cleaning, and I wanted to tell him that. But that's just my little...
to tell the audience who he was so that they know who we're referring to.
He invited me to come down from Wyoming to New Mexico. He had interviewed a young woman and her son. They had encountered a flying saucer, and they had seen a calf being levitated, at least that's the way they saw it, on a beam of light from the ground up into the craft. So he wanted to know if hypnosis would help remember more about it. He was eccentric. He wanted us to sit in a car and have some kind of metallic covering because he was afraid that the government officials would be tuned in on it. And yet, maybe he knew what he was talking about. I enjoyed talking with him, bright, articulate. At one point, he pointed out we were looking at the night sky, and he could see things well beyond what most people could see. So there was nothing wrong with his vision. There was nothing wrong with his mental ability to estimate size and distance. When the woman was willing to go through hypnosis, she described what she felt was not only the sighting, that is the craft in the sky, and the beam of light that levitated this bawling calf, young cow, into the flying saucer. But she also felt like later on she was taken out of the craft, along with some tall ETs who walked along with her, down into an underground cavern. Some people wonder if Dulce, New Mexico, is one of those places where there's underground caverns. She felt like she was walking along a hallway and looked into a pot, and she couldn't tell whether these bones were cattle or whether they were human bones. She was very frightened, and it was very difficult for her to describe all of the things that were happening to her. So after one session, she came back and we rested a while. I tried to talk with the boy about his experiences, but we weren't getting much more information. So we made arrangements, Paul and I, that I would come back later to see if further sessions would be helpful in recovering more of the information that we thought was happening because of the memories that she'd had of that experience. Well, when I came back, things had changed. He had a pistol on his belt. He had a rifle in his hand. He thought I was probably a member of the CIA or worse.
Paranoid.
And at that point, his fear was paranoid. And so not only did he fear what government officials were doing, he feared what I might be doing. And so he asked me to leave, so I did. And because the main reason was because I was telling him and I was telling Myrna. I don't know if you're familiar with Linda Moulton Howe, but she has helped me in other cases, and I had encouraged these other people to come forth publicly, and I encouraged Paul to talk about it publicly, but he was in no mood for that, and so that was the last I saw of him.
And for those who are listening, just a quick summary of who Paul Bennewitz was. He owned the company Thunder Scientific Corporation, which was a company that manufactured equipment for the military, correct?
Yeah, he was a bright, capable guy, no doubt about it. And if he was correct in what he said, then he was being under surveillance by military and or governmental or paragovernmental officials.
Dulce, New Mexico, similar to the plains of Colorado in its isolation, but nestled among rolling hills and small mountains, is the land of the Jicarilla Apache. Tradition is strong here. Indian women weave intricate baskets and create delicate beadwork. The men preside over tribal business and raise cattle. And here, as in Logan County, the night sky has been lit with the glow of unknown flying objects, and cattle are found mutilated. Officer Gabe Valdez of the New Mexico State Police and retired scientist Howard Burgess, who pioneered the development of Kirlian photography in this country, periodically pool their knowledge and expertise in an effort to solve the mutilation mystery. Officer Valdez describes how it all began.
It was in 1976, June the 14th, when we first had one of our cattle mutilations here in Dulce. The cattle that was mutilated belonged to Mr. Manuel Gomez. Any time that we do find one that it's not too decomposed and it's fresh enough for us to do some tests, well, I do call on Mr. Burgess because he has a lot of knowledge in the field of science that is very helpful to me in conducting my investigations.
Howard Burgess had a theory that some of the cattle had been marked prior to their mutilation with something which would show up under ultraviolet light but be invisible to the naked eye. Late one night, he and Valdez conducted an experiment and found that out of 80 head of cattle, 5 were indeed marked with a powdery white substance, visible only under ultraviolet light.
So we took ultraviolet with some special filters and ran the cattle through it, and what appears to be markings glowed under ultraviolet. It's invisible to the normal eye, but under ultraviolet it does glow. Then we removed the hair from the region that does glow, and we removed a control sample. We took these to the lab and had chemical checks run on them. We did find that the sample that did glow is extremely high in potassium and magnesium. At the time, this was interesting, but it didn't mean much to us until we ran on to other things that began to tie in with it.
The tie-in came on July 3rd, 1978, when a UFO was sighted over Taos, New Mexico. As it hovered over the town, it dropped a thin film of ashes onto the ground below. The ashes contained high levels of magnesium and potassium, the same elements found on the cattle under ultraviolet light, but there was more.
We find there's at least 25 elements in there. There's a good possibility that it may be something that's organic. And if it is, this just opens up a real bag of worms, because anything can happen if this is an organic material that has come from one of these crafts. And this, as the people told us, directly fell from the craft that was hovering over the area.
Dulce is a quiet, unassuming town nestled in northern New Mexico. Many of its residents are members of the Jicarilla Apache tribe. They swear.
I tell stories, but my nose isn't growing.
They are not making this up.
They threw down a ladder from that spaceship, and then 2 small people started climbing down.
Jerry Julian says she had her first extraterrestrial encounter right here on her Dulce ranch about 40 years ago.
It was huge. I just saw the bottom of it. You know, it was like flat like this.
Many of her neighbors claim similar strange sightings.
Fat in the middle and kind of like rounded on the sides. You're speechless, you know? You just don't know what to think, you know? It's just like, it's like nothing you've ever encountered before.
Why are stories of the extraordinary ordinary here?
I do not know. I do not know. Probably in kind of that big mountain we have right there, you know.
Rumor has it there is a secret base hidden underneath the Archuleta Mesa here. The mountain overlooks Dulce. Some people in town say the base is run by aliens working with our federal government to conduct mind control and genetic experiments. Do you believe that?
Yeah. Well, a whole bunch of people seen it, you know.
Like the ground opened up, steam coming out of it.
They also claim they've seen some creatures cooked up in those experiments, like Bigfoot and something half human.
Down this way, the waist down, it's a goat. It has a tail. But up here, it's a man.
People tell me Dulce wasn't always a center for supernatural activity, but then sometime in the 70s, things changed. That's when cows started turning up mutilated.
They just cut out in between the legs right here. We've seen one.
I know it's not a predator it's doing it. There's someone's doing it.
Local police never definitively said who's to blame. Locals say it has to be something out of this world. And since then,
I was taking a random picture, zoomed it in, and there was a UFO right there.
They say they know it sounds crazy.
They're just going to ask me, well, how much did you drink or what did you drink?
I'll submit to a lie detector test or anything, you know.
But say it's the truth. Question is, do you believe?
Anything possible these days now.
In Dulce, Megan Cruz, KOAT Action 7 News.